Picture this. France is so committed to rebooting society that, during the revolution, lawmakers even tried to reboot the clock, dividing the day into 10 hours, each hour into 100 minutes, and each minute into 100 seconds. That's not trivia. It's a clue. France has a habit of turning political arguments into exportable products. Citizenship, centralized administration, and rights as a political weapon. But this wasn't inevitable. The land that becomes France could have remained a loose patchwork of rival regions and local lords. Instead, over centuries, it becomes a state that keeps trying to make the rules universal. So, where did this begin? We're going to speedrun 1,183 years, 843 to 2026, and we start with a breakup. In August 843, the Treaty of Verdun split Charlemagne's Carolingian Empire among three heirs, producing West Francia, Middle Francia, and East Francia. West Francia, roughly the western portion of the Old Empire, is often treated as a political ancestor of the later Kingdom of France. But here's the twist. 843 doesn't hand you a modern nation. It hands you a map and a messy power contest between kings, counts, bishops, and armed neighbors. The king has a title, but not automatic control. The story is how that title slowly turns into real authority. That's why 987 matters. After the last Carolingian king in West Francia, Louis V, dies without an heir, leading nobles choose Hugh Capet as king. The bigger point is what follows. The Capetian line and its later branches keep producing kings for centuries, and continuity is leverage. A stable throne can build courts, expand a tax base, and slowly turn the King of the Franks into something closer to the King of France. Quick micro skit. Imagined, citizen, what time is it? It's 5 o'clock. Normal 5? No, revolution 5. That confusion is the point. France's story isn't just kings and battles. It's repeated attempts to standardize life so the center can actually govern the edges. Next. Well, watch the monarchy tighten the screws, clash with rival power centers, and build the pressure cooker that finally detonates in 1789. Fast forward. Once the Capetian line gives the crown continuity, the monarchy starts doing what continuity is best at: turning relationships into systems. The king doesn't own France yet, but he can slowly convert loyalty into law, and law into taxes, and taxes into soldiers. Here is the twist. The more the crown centralizes, the more it creates a single point of failure. If the center cracks, the whole structure shakes. Then Europe hands France a brutal identity forge. The 100 Years' War, conventionally dated from 1337 to 1453. That's not one war. It's a long, jagged series of campaigns and truces that drags on for generations. So why does it matter for a speed run? Because it forces the question: is France just a king's personal domain? Or is it something people can fight for as France? Now drop into 1429 for a second. Joan of Arc shows up and helps shift momentum for the French side, especially around the Siege of Orléans, becoming a symbol that the cause can outgrow the court. And symbols are political technology. They outlive the battlefield. But winning wars doesn't end internal fractures. By the 1500s, religious conflict becomes civil conflict, and France spends decades trying not to tear itself apart. The pressure only eases when Henry IV issues the Edict of Nantes, promulgated on April 13, 1598, granting a measure of religious liberty to French Protestants and helping end the long wars of religion. That's a pragmatic state move, tolerate enough to stabilize the country. And then comes the era people instantly recognize: the state as a spotlight. In 1682, Louis XIV moves the seat of court and government to Versailles, turning it into the de facto center of power. This isn't just a palace story. It's a control system. Gather the elites, monitor them, and make the kingdom run through the center. So, what happens when an expensive, centralized machine runs out of money? You get 1,789. Louis XVI summons the Estates General, and it opens at Versailles on May 5, 1,789. What begins as a financial fix becomes a legitimacy crisis. Who represents the nation? Who pays? And who gets to speak for France? And that leads directly to the moment the street enters the story as a political actor, because when the center wobbles, people stop waiting for permission. On July 14, 1,789, crowds in Paris stormed the Bastille, a fortress prison that had become a symbol of royal power. Militarily, it's not the biggest target in France. Symbolically, it's everything. The idea that the people can physically break the old order. Weeks later, France does something even more dangerous than taking a fortress. It writes a new kind of legitimacy. On August 26, 1,789, the National Assembly adopts the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. This is the revolution, turning into a portable blueprint. Rights, citizenship, law, phrases that can cross borders and survive regimes. But revolutions don't run on ideals alone. They run on fear, food, and power vacuums. As factions harden and war spreads, the revolution radicalizes until defending liberty starts justifying extraordinary violence. France tries to remake society from the top down, right down to the calendar and even the logic of time. The point isn't the gimmick, the point is the mindset. If you can standardize life, you can govern it. Then comes the pivot that every revolution risks: the strongman. On November 9, 1,799, the coup of 18 Brumaire brings Napoleon Bonaparte to power. In speedrun terms, this is the revolution, trading instability for efficiency. Because people will accept a lot if it means the chaos stops. And on December 2, 1804, Napoleon crowns himself emperor at Notre Dame. The revolution began by attacking monarchy. It ends up producing an empire. That's not hypocrisy, it's gravity. Centralized states pull toward centralized power. Napoleon's wars reorder Europe. But here's the deeper export: administration, legal frameworks, the state as a system you can copy. Then the empire falls and France spends the 1800s doing what France does best: rebooting. The 19th century is a carousel of regimes, restorations, revolutions, empires, republics, because France is still arguing what authority should look like. But even while governments flip, the state keeps thickening. Bureaucracy, education, infrastructure, national identity. The argument never ends. The machinery keeps growing. Then disaster clarifies politics. In 1940, the Battle of France runs from May 10 to June 25, and France is overrun in weeks. It's one of the great shocks of modern French history. A country that once dominated Europe collapses fast under mechanized war. But France's story is never just collapse. It's collapse followed by reconstruction of power, of dignity, of narrative. In August 1944, Paris rises and the city is liberated. The German garrison surrenders on August 25. Liberation becomes more than a military event. It becomes a political reset button. France reasserting itself as France. After the war, France tries parliamentary government again and again, runs into instability. Then the system changes into the one that still defines France today. The Constitution of the Fifth Republic is adopted and takes effect on October 4, 1958. A design built for durability, with a stronger executive at the center. In other words, France doesn't abandon centralization. It modernizes it. And modern France doesn't exist in isolation. It binds itself into Europe's. Next experiment. France is a founding signatory of the Treaty of Rome, signed March 25, 1957, creating the European Economic Community, one of the roots of the European Union. Then money goes European. 2. France adopts the euro as book money in 1999, and euro banknotes and coins enter circulation on January 1, 2002. The franc disappears from daily life. And that's not just economics, it's identity. So what does 2026 look like at the end of this 1,183-year sprint? A modern, semi-presidential republic with a long memory and a constant appetite for debate about secularism, equality, state power, and what it means to be French. Demographically, France sits around 68.6 million people as of January 1, 2025. A useful scale marker for the France you're describing at the end of the timeline. And if you zoom out, the arc from 843 to 2026 stops looking like random chaos and starts looking like a pattern. France repeatedly builds a stronger center, breaks it in a crisis, then rebuilds it often with new language that the rest of the world ends up borrowing. So that's France, 843 to 2026, 1,183 years from a broken empire's western shard to a modern republic built on centralized power and constant argument. And the through line is simple. France keeps rebuilding the center, then testing how universal its rules can be. That's why French history doesn't just stay in France. It travels.